All right, I think we are up and recording. Wicked. What's up, fam? It's your boy Demuir here, purveyor of all sounds underground. Thank you for joining me on this YouTube or slash podcast slash IG live thing we got going on. This is really special for me because I'm going to be doing regular interviews with people who are in and outside of the dance music industry, but who are contributing quite how should I say, quite materially to, different causes and things that make our culture progressive. So I'm happy to introduce for our first episode here, my main man, Funk Butcher, out of the UK. Um, I've come across you before. I know you were following me on my socials and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Those that don't know you or a lot about you, can you just share with us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So, as you said, I'm Funk Butcher, and I'm a DJ producer from London based, and I've come up through the avenue of pirate radio. So, in the capital of London, we have pirate radio stations. So basically, that was a way that young people who had a real passion for the art form and they couldn't make it onto commercial platforms to articulate themselves, they would set up illegal setups. They were illegal, so he was doing naughty things, and would transmit to their friends in and around the area on a frequency that they could pick up on the FM dial. So I was part of a pirate radio organization called Deja Vu FM. Before that, there's loads of them anyway. That's another thing. So there's loads of these different pirate radio stations. Nowadays, it's more about internet based because they want to kind of broaden their reach. But Deja Vu and Rinse FM were kind of big, powerful institutions in the world of pirate radio over the course of the past 20 years. And they've spurned a lot of the underground and overground talent have come from that aspect. You have to remember as well, London is a city, 7 million, I think, in size. So that's just one aspect. There's the East London pirate radio scene, but there was pirate radio stations all over the capital. So I've come from the underground and I've progressed and I've played on commercial radio stations, a Kiss FM.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, so we've got a Kiss FM over in the UK and London, and my specialist sound is house. And I've kind of, I specialize in house, but I'm not concentrated on a particular style of house. I'm just really about anything with a good groove. So I've produced soulful stuff, I've produced tech stuff, I've produced some minimal stuff, Afro. I've produced all these kind of different sounds, and I released them independently on my own label, Houseology, and I've released stuff on Sulfuric, Nervous Records, Scoochie Minucci, gosh, quite a few. Yeah, so that's kind of where I've come from. That in the UK, we've had a scene called Funky House or UK Funky. Yeah. And it takes a lot of its roots from the broken beat sound. It's kind of like an amalgamation of broken beat, house, even slight elements of grime as well. Some grime producers have kind of dabbled with it. So as we transitioned out of garage in and around the 90s into the noughties, when garage was had a lot of momentum behind it, we kind of transitioned into funky or UK funky house. That was a space where predominantly the black Londoners, the black raving community were raving to that. There were other sounds. I mean, London is very, very diverse in its raving capacity in terms of you've got your hip hop community, you've got your dancehall and your bashment community, you've got even got your small soca crowd even there as well. So you've got all these different sounds, and of course grime as well. But a lot of the stations, they were playing at that time, so from about 2005 for the past about 10, 12 years, they were playing funky house or UK funky. And that is really, it had tracks in there. So it would have tracks from people like Four Hero and Sinbad, but it would also have tracks from Charisma, Kenny Dope, and of UK producers as well. So you have Hard Ass Banton, Fuzzy Logic, Rosca, So they're like the UK guys that were kind of contributing as well to the sound. And the DJs, there was like myself and other DJs such as Super D, DJ Pioneer, Marcus Nasty, Wigman, MA1, Scratcher. We kind of were kind of curating the sound in our sets in our own various ways. Some of us are more purist in the sense of they would play only UK produced music, and others were kind of picking and mixing it up. Yeah, a bit of a long-winded answer, I know.
No. You've actually, I think it's quite a comprehensive answer, because it gives a sense. I'm presuming, your connection to pirate radio was as early as the 90s, because that's when I remember it.
Yeah.
From being here in Canada and outside looking in, I remember pirate radio was huge coming from the UK, and then we tried to do some of that stuff here, but that was like a 90s thing for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the pirate radio thing in London especially, it kind of exists because the commercial radio stations were never really on the pulse in regards to people's tastes, and the only way you can really engage with the music that you could hear in the club was via pirate radio institutions. So you've got this pirate radio ecosystems and the talent on there that was feeding the clubs in London, because DJs were playing it. So yeah, so
it's the exact same experience here. So I find so your answer is not long-winded. It's actually, I think for a lot of us, that was our initial introduction to house music. Like for me, it wasn't necessarily pirate radio, but it was underground radio, and there was called Ryerson Radio, played Fridays here, and they're playing like underground house music. I got my first taste of real drum and bass stuff coming from the UK, and as well as the UKG stuff eventually, and then the funky house UK stuff too. So yeah, more than the Chicago stuff. So no, comprehensive answer. I appreciate that. And you kind of answered some of my other questions, but the one piece I do want to ask you is, what would you say was your first enlightening moment where you're saying, "Geez, this is a huge cultural movement"?
Gosh, I think there's been so many for me, because where I'm positioned in London, I'm a Hackney boy. So Hackney is a borough in East London, and as an area, there's a lot of kind of stars or specialists from their sound that have come out of the area. So I guess it's that awareness of someone being really huge in the scene, but you've got a proximity to them because they just live down the road. Yeah. So you have someone from the jungle scene, someone from the UKG scene, someone from the grime scene and whatnot, and they're all around you. And I guess it's that proximity, it really rubs off on you, because you will go on a rave on a weekend and you'd see these people, and then maybe during the week when you go into the shops, you'd see them as well. Yeah. And that's the nature of the kind of the capacity of how immersed we are in the culture. And in some regard, it might be a bit of we were spoiled because we couldn't really appreciate it because we were immersed in it so much. There's some people who are famous that I've played football with, like soccer with, over the years. And although you recognize the level that they've got to in the game, you almost kind of get desensitized to it because they're so huge, but you know them by their real government name, or you know that person because you can pick and talk to them. But in answer to what your question, the culture, you just feel it all the time because you're always around these people, and whether they're going pirate radio station or whether you kind of got a text on the phone back in the day, oh, lock in, I'm on radio tonight, or so you was always immersed in that culture. Yeah. So it was almost like a bonding experience, whether you bonded during sport or bonded through trying to MC or DJ on radio. These were like rites of passage if you lived in inner city London to kind of have an involvement in music.
Yeah, no, I feel you. And I would say I've had similar moments here. Like I stepped away from music for the longest while and came back around 2010. And those guys were like Nathan Barato and Carlo Leo, the Junkies for me. They're predominantly tech house youths, but I mean, to be from Toronto and be kicking it with Carl Cox or Nicole Madaber on the weekends, and they come back and you see them, and it's like, what's up? It also, I wonder if you had the same experience. It also sort of told me that it showed me anything is really possible as long as you're committed
Mm-hmm.
to the roots of the craft, and acknowledging things and really being true to the art. So would you say you had a similar experience?
Yeah, you kind of, when you come up in the pirate radio aspect, you really have a sense of tunnel vision,
Mm.
because before, you just go in there, you're doing your show, and and you're paying subs, you're actually paying for it. So the maintenance of these illegal radio stations is propped up by the contributions of the DJs. So you pay your subs, and it's crazy because you're paying for something illegal.
I know, man. I know.
So you pay for it, but it's, I think what it shows is that you have an unprecedented dedication to your music, that you're doing something that you could get in trouble for, but you're willing to pay for it. You're willing to take your records there. You're willing to, if the regulators, the kind of Ofcom they're called, if they come, they could take away your records, and then they'll just um, raffle them off for like 50p a record. So you could lose your whole collection. But those are the things that we were so dedicated to, that we were willing to take those risks. But you just keep doing this for long enough, and it just becomes a little bit just automatic in regards to where you're taking the music. So I didn't ever envision myself becoming a producer. It was more a case of, well, I like this enough and I want to try this. So then I start producing, and then, oh, I like this and I want to curate the kind of environment where I want to play. So I'll become a promoter. And you start to begin to collect skill sets based off your trajectory in the game, which kind of brings us onto why I felt the need to put up that tweet thread that we're going to talk about the other day. Yeah.
That was going to be my next question, because I think, with everything going on in terms of anti-racism, it's a really huge momentum. And as Black artists, we experience this as people and in our music. So it's very profound for us. So when I came across your thread on social media, um, and noticed your conversation happening directly with Simon Dunmore of Defected Records, I was very much intrigued, because I put out a video asking all people in dance music who have a substantial platform to not only say, hey, we're against racism, but to actually acknowledge you benefit from this shit. And because of that benefit, I want to understand what changes or what level of influence you're going to bring to the game. So it's like, I read your thing, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to talk to this guy about it. Can you give us some context about your exchange with Simon Dunmore? Like, I read words like disappointed and
Yeah.
and I was like, wow, okay, so please frame it for us and give us some context behind it.
Yeah, I mean, I was very, the way I use Twitter, that obviously you've got your social media platforms and Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, and I tend to use Twitter a lot more than the other three because of the conversational aspect of it. And so when, this is the first time I've ever composed a tweet where I writ it out first before, because I normally just tweet on the go, but I had to get the tone right, because you and I know as Black men in this industry that it's the margins of how we can be perceived as angry and bitter are so very, very, yeah. So we're we're treading a very, very, very fine line. Yeah. So I had to get the tone where I was illuminating something, but not attacking the person, because it isn't the person, it's the practices. And realistically, I need Simon, and I've met Simon loads of times. Me and Simon are aware of each other. I've had releases on his label, and I started off the tweet, like, very importantly, that's to say that this isn't a witch hunt. This is not a witch hunt. I'm not going for Simon. I'm exposing a practice or a behavior that even he may not be aware of. And if he isn't, this is why and I kind of linked in the step-by-steps as to how I felt there was a level of like he was tone deaf to certain things that we automatically would have picked up and been like, well, you would have seen this, or you would have known about this if you had a proximity to Black people.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and just to pause, I'll let you continue, but I want to highlight this point because I think as Black men, as Black people, especially those who are contributing their art to, large labels like Defected that people sort of look up to in the underground community somewhat and say, wow, I aspire to be that. I've released music on Defected, and there was a time where I said, oh, I need to get my music there because of what I felt it meant to the culture. So as a result, you use the word proximity, and it is a brilliant word. When I, as a Black man and an artist, submit music to a label that's entrenched and benefits from Black culture, I'll be honest, I have an automatic expectation. You are aware of the social sensitivities as it pertains to my experience as a Black man, especially in the context and form of racism. So I submit this music to you with some degree of vulnerability. So when this thing happens, I do, like, I have an expectation you're going to stand up for me. So I just wanted to put that there because I think that's one of the things as Black men and artists and producers, we go in with that expectation that although the label owner is white, they do understand the sensitivity of this culture.
Yeah, and it was literally, it was a suicide mission because I didn't know how this critique of his operations would go. He could become very defensive and whatnot. And all credit to Simon, the way he handled the situation is part of why I feel collectively we're going to come out of this, everyone, a lot better because it was, we had a phone conversation afterwards, and I don't want to obviously disclose too much about the personal conversation, but it was, what I would say was that it was quite difficult at times for him to perceive where I was coming from, because for the most part, he probably hasn't had a situation where he's been told this before. And a lot of the time, maybe his involvement with the culture, it was kind of validated by the fact that he was generating wealth in some Black communities' hands. And then that was supposed to extrapolate to all of us. But as I would like to point out to some of the white listeners of your podcast as well, that Black people aren't a monolith, and you can't expect what happens to one person to really resonate with everyone. There are ways where you can actually show a bit of a broader level of care to a community, but it's not that, you can't do that by putting money in one person's pocket, or putting money in one person's pocket, or putting one Black person's pocket. That's not a genuine way of articulating a contribution to a community, especially when you're benefiting from it as well. Yeah. So, yeah, go on. Sorry.
So I guess just for context for the listeners and those watching this video, your response and brilliant and thoughtful response to Simon was in response to, you used the words tone deaf. So yeah, can you give us some context around that? Like, was this him responding to something or someone, and you felt he just missed the ball?
Yeah. I mean, for me and yourself, as Black men, we are Black 24/7, 365. We feel things that ordinarily a white person is not going to feel. And this isn't for a white person to automatically try and switch on that empathy setting in the back of their neck and try and engage with us. You can't do it. Same way, I would never be able to understand what a gay Black man feels, or a trans person feels, or a white woman feels. We can't do it. The best we can do is try to listen. I think that's what we can try to listen and learn and engage from those experiences. Our intuitiveness is based off that learning process, because then we can build up a series of patterns based off what we've learned of a broad spectrum of maybe black people, or maybe trans people, or maybe gay people, as to what is offensive and what isn't. So when what's happening on the other side of the pond in America with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, is obviously resonating, because we as black people are always going to feel that sense of unified pain, especially that helplessness that a black person has at the hands of a police. I mean, we've got our own cases historically over here with police killings and sadly just mistreatment of black people in custody here. Yeah. So it's a very emotive topic. The moment when a white person is able to indicate that sense of emotion from the black community that they work in, that's what I was challenging in him. It should be a lot quicker. It should be a lot quicker, because the proximity is closer. He's within the culture.
Yes, yeah.
So when that happened, and an LGBTQ account must have asked him a question along the lines of, I think it was in response to him saying he's listening to house music, and the account said, don't forget that house music is black music. And he said, house music has no color. And I didn't respond to that. I responded off the back of when we've had Blackout Tuesday in the music industry, so everyone's kind of blacked out. My response was off the back of that, when Simon, or the brands which are associated with Simon, then began to say that house music is black music. It has color. So then it looked a little bit, okay, well, I didn't like that, because one minute you didn't see color, next minute you saw it, you're colorblind, has an on and off switch. So that's why I kind of was the basis of me challenging him. And like I said, Simon, although it was quite a difficult thing to comprehend initially, he would have tried to dig in, because ordinarily, because he hasn't heard anything like this or critique of his practices like this, you could only assume he's acting in good faith. And it was, so I mean, I think it's a difficult time, but we've lived with this uncomfort for years. This is our day-to-day. We're functioning through this uncomfort, us as black artists, black musicians, black people. So this pales in comparison, the uncomfort that some white audiences might have in engaging in this conversation and engaging in this mood. So it's good.
Yeah, it's a good conversation to have. And just for context, I'm going to read the original tweet. I think I brought about your response, but please stop me if I'm wrong. Yeah. So this tweet is from Simon Demuir, and he basically said on this, I think this was May 30th, and his original post was, "Hey, music has," he didn't say hey, "music has no color. We," and I'm assuming he's referring to Defected, "we acknowledge and respect the origins of house, but trying to segregate is really not helpful, especially in these times." And then he since, I think, wrote a post, I guess, after your response and phone conversation with him, which reads as follows. On May 30th, I posted the attached response, which is the one I just read, when I was asked not to forget the roots of house music. Whilst my intentions were centered around a positive message about bringing people together at this time, I recognized the ignorance and thoughtlessness in my comments. So I'm presuming that happened after your conversation with him, or yeah. And after your thread. And please, for those of you watching or listening, I ask you, I beg you to go read that thread on. I hope you have it posted or pinned to your Twitter. I'll put all the links there. But I'm encouraging this because this shows what a real conversation looks like. What a great way it is to approach something that's sensitive to people, to use your words, that might be in a moment that is tone deaf and appear insensitive to the fact that, Black music and culture, is the foundation of electronic music, like dance music, period. So I encourage you to read through that, and I'm glad you guys had the conversation. So, anyways, I just wanted to share that to give people perspective.
Mm-hmm. So,
And
yeah, sorry, go on.
yeah, and what did you think about his response? Now that I've read it.
Yeah, I think I heard his response anyway on the phone when we came off the back of the phone conversation. So um, it was positive. I knew it was positive off the end of the phone conversation, and then I wanted to very quickly put out any possible fires, because I knew that, like I said before, the way I might frame a conversation is going to be completely different to another way another black man does it, or another black woman, or another black gay person, or another black trans person. So I'm not a spokesperson for the culture. I just literally had a conversation, and I'm doing this for the benefit of everyone who has our skin tone, because we're all fighting the same battle.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. We're all fighting that same battle of, this is the first thing someone with a prejudiced perspective, or even a subconscious prejudiced perspective, may see, and their decision making is shaped from it. So I was just really trying to have a conversation and get things to change when we come back out of this whole COVID-19 madness that we're going through. Do you know? So this is at the backdrop of this. You have to remember as well, contextually, we are living at a time where over in the UK, they've just recently released information from the government that statistically, black people were more at risk of dying from COVID-19 than other parts of the demographic. Mm-hmm. So when you've got that on board of police brutality, on board of this racial bias, it just feels like, oh, come on, give us a break.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Okay, yeah. Well, I'm looking at it like, well, what can I do here? If I can't find a vaccine for COVID, let me try and see if I can find this vaccine for racism through unraveling some of the stubbornness, I guess, and just changing the perspective and broadening it a little bit in our white brothers and sisters that we need to operate in this world with. Yeah. And yeah, it was just a very difficult path to tread, but I think it's been received really well. I've had lots of supportive messages from people like Annie Mac and Scream and Eats Everything and white peers in my music industry, the global music industry, who have kind of seen the progressive aspects of what I was trying to say.
Yeah, yeah, and I would have to say that is heartfelt. I think a lot of people in our industry that are not black, but who are benefiting off of the culture and are inspired deeply by the culture, they're really extra sensitive. Like, they don't want to say anything out of turn. They're wondering, hey, am I going to be perceived as someone just jumping on the bandwagon and trying to benefit off of this moment too? And I think the appropriate response is just to speak from your heart and operate as such. And if that means we're going to end up agreeing to disagree, that's cool too. At least I know who you are. That's exactly the end of it. So I think you opening up that conversation, and with the fact that it's Simon, is a phenomenal example. And on that note, so it sounds like you're comfortable with his response, and I thought him acknowledging, the word thoughtlessness was pretty striking for me, for him to use that to describe his behavior, and I thought that was pretty material. What do you feel are the next steps now that we sort of open up the conversation? Like, what do you think needs fixing now? And where do you think it needs to go long term? Because we can't fix everything.
Yeah, of course. So I know as an individual, I move at a fast pace anyway. I mean, I've got three boys, 10, 6 and 3. Oh, so yeah, so getting them ready for school in the morning is sometimes
So when you showed up to this interview, Like 10 minutes before, it's like, this guy, he values the time. I love it.
So I think because of the context, like COVID-19 and the kind of quarantine and the global situation has kind of created a perfect storm in a weird sense of the way. And it is very bittersweet because a lot of people have passed away, sadly.
Yeah.
And it's meant that this moment, whilst we're inside, is really concentrating our energies on reflecting as what is important, what's really important now. It's not the job, it's not the car that you can't drive now because you've got to stay indoors. It's none of those things. It's not your summer holidays because you can't go anywhere. You have to really simplify what you hope or what you perceive as important in this world. And I think it's when you reduce it, it comes down to our engagements with one another. So one thing that I'm looking to kind of get out of this is the visibility aspect. Because what I've exposed is that, for the most part, we're only really seen, sadly, in the capacity of sport and music, Black people. I mean, people see us, it's not like they walk through us like this is Patrick Swayze and Ghost. It's not like that, but...
Oh, shit. That's funny.
It's just a case of we have to be seen in the things which affect us on a human aspect outside of music. Because the one thing I did see when I was getting all the trolls coming at me is house music has no color, house music has no color. I'm just like, what do you mean? Like, house music is born out of the frustrations of gay, Black, and the Latinos. Like, they had to build their own environment. Of course, there's color, it's political. It's not your escapism, which is how they framed it. It's house music or other forms of music is where they go to after a hard time or a tough day at work. They might go to and let loose. So reshaping it and refocusing what it really is because of where it's coming from. It's coming from Black people, so you can't change the context of the message, is very important. Yeah. So, like I said before, visibility. So I contacted Mixmag. I took a shot into the dark. I was like, wouldn't this be great if, and I hadn't even arranged this yet, so wouldn't it be great if Mixmag do a...
You're familiar with this, right? Yes. This is Black, yo. This is Black. What kid? I'm Trinidadian, but you know. Well, good for you. No, that is proactive on your part. Geez, that even makes this more compelling because I saw your tweet that you are going to be having an interview with them as well.
Yeah. So
visibility, good thing, man. That's good. Good for you.
Yeah. So trying to get the visibility, and what I was trying to achieve is it's going to be difficult because obviously Black music is huge. Especially Black involvement in electronic music is huge. What I wanted was to start is a conversation, is a behavioral pattern which sets the trend. So I initially got reached out to do a feature, and I said, no, I'd rather have an issue. And they were just like, oh, okay. So I was just like, yeah, because I don't really want to do one feature, one dibby feature on just one person, and that's it. And then you believe that you've paid homage to a whole transgression with just one article. Just like, nah, I want an issue where I can talk about this scene, that scene, these people's voices. Initially, I had a thread before that one where I was talking about Black women in music and how they've been phased out of the marketing process, and that went viral. So there's another tweet which I kind of highlighted as to why are Black women used as the kind of the cultural aesthetic for house tracks, but you can't see them. Like people are really adamant to find out the identities of like Daft Punk, and they wear masks like Deadmau5. But no one's really trying to find out the faces behind these powerful Black voices who have played these records, and that's really, really sad, and it needs to be changed. So I did a whole thread on that, and I'm hoping to expand on that in that issue, and just to look at different other aspects of. So
No, that's good for you. I'd say, isn't it amazing? And this is how I don't want to get too deep and spiritual here, but
Mhm.
I was sharing with someone when the George Floyd murder happened. I was sharing with one of my white friends. This is it. You're gonna see massive change because
Mhm.
I'm sitting here in Toronto, Canada, and
Mhm.
he's on a pavement in Minnesota, and I can tell you, I felt the reverberation of that every
Yeah. Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
Hard watching videos. So I said, dude, you're gonna see some things you never seen before. I'm gonna say some shit to you you never heard before. Don't get mad. Don't take it personal. But
Yeah.
it's an absolute response to this.
Yeah. Definitely. And it's it's really in the sense of, I always kind of put these tweets out where I'm saying we need to learn how to read the room, and I've learned how to read the room in the capacity of social media. The same way as a DJ, you know what to do to bring the raver from the bar to the dance floor. You know how to send the raver back to the bar. If you want, you know how to clear the room if you play a track that is really obscure and no one's ever heard of. Because you can read the room and the kind of the tastes and what people are receptive to.
Yep.
When George Floyd passed, the energy in the room was, because I like to have a broad spectrum of people in my timeline, so I can see conversations and see, and you can people from the UK. So I try as best as possible to have people outside of my sphere of influence and outside of my echo chamber,
Yeah.
so I can actually see what the mood is broader. So when I see people complaining about the music industry and how COVID-19 means that they can't tour, they can't gig, and Spotify is not really paying anything. And then you see this sudden surge towards platforms like Bandcamp. You can see
Yeah. Yeah.
the yeah, you can see the mood changing.
Or,
So similarly,
or everybody's streaming. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So it's just understanding that at that point in time, everyone was shifting to this point where black black people, black entertainers were like, we've had enough. And I think I saw a message from Cornell West the other day, um, and it's about 10 minutes long. It's a video, and he was just talking about the fact that within us as a community, we have a sense to rebuild using love. Um, it's quite reflective of how we've dealt with problems and pressures of the community historically. Obviously, there's been rebellions and uprisings throughout the relationship between black and whites, but generally speaking, black people in proximities with white and that have been, I guess, for all intents and purposes, subjugated,
Yep.
they've responded with with open arms, really. And again, this is a kind of way where we're doing it again. We're starting the conversation again. This has a black genesis kind of thing. It was the conversation started off with black, and this is having a black genesis as we are being embracing and saying this isn't restrictive. This is an inclusive conversation.
Yes.
But what I'm not prepared to budge on is that we're not going back to the old times. No way. And that's what me as a person, I know how to be accommodating, but still be, I guess, steadfast in what I need to. Yeah.
No, that is the perfect. I'm really enjoying this conversation. That is the perfect interpretation of how a lot of us in the black community feel for just for social issues and as well within the electronic dance music industry. Your point
Yeah.
on let's focus on visibility is an incredible one, and let's make an issue of it, like a literal magazine issue of it. Like let's not have one page. Let's
No.
take the whole book and
Yeah.
have the conversation. So I think that's profoundly important. And just in your latter point about where black people are, um, I would encourage those inside the industry and outside of the industry. This is not a time to jump ship like we have with other art forms. We did it for the right purposes. So let me give some context and examples to that. So let's take the blues.
Yep.
Okay, if you go to a blues concert today, it's predominantly white artists. The audience is white, and it's great that they appreciate the music for what it is, and it's great that they do justice to the music. But that is an example, a profound example to me of where black people said, "Shit, man, we've handed the music over to the white man," and that it's a two-way street, though.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And don't get me wrong, like I mean, there are certain things not available to people, much less black people, by that time in terms of capital and opportunities to have black-owned blues labels, and there are other systemic things of keeping black-run labels and blues music out of radio stations. But yeah, they'll throw a white guy on the cover and play the same music, right? And then we saw the same thing when it morphed into rock and roll,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then we saw the same thing with soul music, and we started calling it blue-eyed soul.
Yeah, yeah.
And all of these things happen with the open and loving arms of inclusiveness, of let's have the conversation to maintain the culture as is. Electronic music, the same fucking thing. We make this fucking music. People in Europe are embracing it. Everyone is jumping in, adding value, and then now it turns into it's young, it's white, and that's what gets put on the fucking bill.
Yeah.
But the singer is black.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? The producers are black. You know what I mean? So there has. I totally agree with you. But as we have this conversation of inclusiveness, we can't jump ship.
No.
And there has to be, push and pull. So call it for what it is. When you see some shit, speak loudly on it. We can't be passive on this anymore.
Yeah. And I hope that whatever fear or trepidation some people may have in regards to having those conversations, I hope I may have helped them seeing the way my conversation went with Simon, because
hands down, absolutely. Kudos.
Yeah, because I guess everything I've done is only remarkable because I've applied it. And it's not to say that I've thought of this amazing idea that no one's ever, everyone is thinking, or rather, most people who are black are thinking what I've done, which is kind of why it's had an overwhelming support behind it. And it's just a case of just making things fairer, because they wasn't fair. We was operating under circumstances that, unbeknown to white people in our industry, they didn't know. They didn't know that, or they didn't care to know, rather, what we was operating under to maybe get a record out there, or to get a radio spot, or to even get into the club. You know what I mean? So it's we have to have that conversation, that awareness. Otherwise, we're working a million times harder than our white counterparts, and then we get burnt out. We leave the industry feeling very bitter. Even me, myself, I've quit music about several times in my head. Oh, I've had enough. And it just, and just my love. Yeah, exactly. I can fall back in. Yeah, man. So I just hope that this kind of encourages people. Just approach it tactfully, have that conversation that needs to be had. You'll probably be surprised by the results.
Yeah, I agree. And, as much as you say that we handle it tactfully, handle it with facts, and it's hard. It's racism, and you're saying it's hard not to personalize it. But there's a difference in having a tactful conversation and a heated, emotional, personalized conversation.
Yes. Yeah.
We don't need to get into the details of the two. I think people are smart enough to know what the difference feels like. So with this, I would say, let's have that conversation. I noticed some pretty influential, people who are not black who actually liked and retweeted my tweet, which was basically the last part of your thread. I said, this is a necessary read. We need to start having these conversations. I think your start with Mixmag is a very good place in terms of the visibility. And
Yeah.
I will say, like, being black and a DJ producer and doing this full time, I will be tactfully watching who does what. This is not a
Mhm.
one and done thing, and I don't want this to come across as a threat or anything. I'm just
Mm.
being real about it.
Yeah,
If you
yeah,
got a platform and you're not black, but you're benefiting off black music, whether you're a club owner, promoter, record label owner, we're watching, we're taking notes
you know,
because
like that. You know the meme in the church where the man's like this. He's just
yeah,
looking.
yeah. We'll be watching. We'll be rolling our.
See?
But we're watching because we are hopeful for the right degree of
Yeah,
change. It's
yeah,
not for confrontation. It's not for an opportunity to say, "Oh, see, I knew you said that shit, but you done fucked up." You know what I mean? It's not that. We are genuinely hoping for change, and some people are going to hear and see things that they don't want to hear. But
yeah,
I welcome labels, promoters, agents. I'll give you the feedback direct. I hope they
yeah,
approach you too after the
yeah,
meeting.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
I'll
I've,
give
I've,
you feedback
I've, I'm,
direct. I'll happily sit at the round table and give
yeah,
tactful responses
yeah,
that will help us change for the better. I really hope.
yeah. Definitely. This is going to be a group effort. This
Yeah,
isn't. This can't rely on myself, yourself, or anyone to try and drive this through. This is a case of the behavioral patterns becoming like it's like the butterfly effect, where it just slowly just spreads everywhere. Just people. This is the way we conduct ourselves when we engage with black people. We listen to their voice. We their voice is equal at every stage of the recording process, at every stage of the marketing process, how we interact with them. That's how it is. And then before you know it, it's just like I don't know, maybe 50 or 100 years ago, recycling wasn't a thing. Now people just recycle. It's not anything they think about. They just, okay, you separate your bottles from your rubbish and
it's intuitive at this point, right?
yeah, yeah,
I think that's the place we want to go. I mean, again, you know, I don't have any other questions, but I will endeavor to follow up with you on a mixed mag thing. I really want to see that come to life. I think
yep.
that is a huge monumental moment um, when that comes to fruition. Um, so, is there anything else you want to add that we might not have covered off?
Yeah, High, Alive and Dirty is an absolute masterpiece. And yeah, I just wanted to wait until you finish so I can tell you, I can embarrass you. That tune is
Right.
incredible. Yeah, I play it, and obviously there's no DJ sets at the moment. So yeah, I play it in my car. I play it everywhere. That
Oh God.
is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So and again, it's the visibility thing because over here in the UK, I felt like I was the only or one of the only people that was really spinning it, and it's just like, why is tracks like that not getting that amplification
Yeah.
like it should do? Because it's incredible, it's incredible. So again, I've always felt like when you see the track working and you see all the people dancing and they're all different races, genders, and whatnot, and but they're not asking the question who is behind this music.
Yeah.
They really stopped their inquisitiveness at okay, it's coming from that DJ that we see that DJ maybe as being a white guy, and we're not going to investigate any further. And that's part of the damaging effect of how we're not amplified in every aspect.
Yeah.
And you are amplified because I can see you, but I guess I get a personal frustration because I'm just like that tune should be everywhere.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I'm kind of sick. I was telling somebody, I'm sick of hearing this too. It's been a year, but no,
Yeah,
point taken. There's not a day that goes without somebody telling me about that song. I'm hoping
yeah,
"Lust in You" will be that new one.
yeah, I'm sure it will.
You know, people seem to be digging that, but absolutely, like, I'll be frank. I know that song was a smash. Everybody knows it's a smash. But hey, would you rather? There seems to be a perception that black people don't really fuck with electronic music, so we're just
Mm,
put more of these guys in front of it,
mm,
which is wrong.
yeah,
It's just it's just wrong to me, and I'm hoping that narrative changes. Well, it has to change. I'm not hoping anymore. It has to change.
What's Toronto like as a scene?
Trump, the scene here is great, man. It's a good mix of house and I would say more tech house, techno stuff. It's kind of
Mm.
evolved to that. Um, so in the house parties, there's like a handful of clubs. So Coda is the major club I played at a few times. Really good vibe. Like people will, if you read the crowd well, they'll take it. You know.
Mm-hmm.
But they've had everybody from like Josh Butler,
Yeah.
myself, Kenny Glasgow, Art Department. I think Nicole Modalpers played there once. But yeah, they had the gambit there. It's a great club. We have festivals here that celebrate electronic music. I think Black Coffee headlined a couple of years ago, which was great. So Toronto as a city, have you been here before?
No, I haven't. No.
Oh, geez. So it's quite diverse. I would say it's very much like London in a sense, but lots of diversity. But you got your West Indian stuff. You can literally go out the door and say, I want to have some Lebanese or Italian or all in
Oh,
this
okay.
gambit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Toronto's wonderful for its diversity and it embraces the music as such. But I don't have anything else. Thanks for your kind words, 9/11 dirty, and please keep doing what you're doing. I enjoy you initiating these critical conversations with action as well, backing it with action, and I think
Yeah.
that's absolutely brilliant. So, thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you for having me.
Oh, no doubt, and I'll be happy to bring you back on later on.
Yeah.
And all the best to you, man. Let's stay in touch.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
All right, one,
Thank you, brother.
peace.